The thing that I always liked most about Thailand is that people from just about everywhere can just get along and exist in harmony together. To me, it felt like a place where you could be from anywhere and it didn't matter. Nobody judged anybody else for their differences, and it made such a nice change to where I was from. I loved to be able to walk around any part of Thailand, but mainly the tourist destinations, and to be able to see so many people from so many different walks of life, from so many different countries, all enjoying Thailand for what it had to offer. This is how I felt back in 2015 when I went for the first time. I felt alive in the moment because I no longer felt like I was living somewhere where people valued other people on based how they looked and how they thought. Thailand seemed to have done a very good job to be able to remove that sense of division that we had, and it was because of that that I actually decided to retire early the following year, in 2016. Thailand had rubbed off on me and made me feel like I no longer wanted to go through the daily grind back at home. I was 52 years old when I went for the first time, 53 when I retired, and I couldn't wait to live somewhere where anybody could just be without worrying about what anybody else thought. I know many people have different opinions about Thailand and how things should be done there, but that's one of the things that I always never understood. Thailand was never my country, and I understood well enough to know that it would never be my country. But if I behaved myself and followed the rules, I would have a place there, albeit as a kind of outsider, but a willing outsider who was grateful to the country of Thailand for allowing me to be there in the first place. I found the process of getting my retirement visa and extension extremely painless, and I use an agent to do my 90-day reports, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. And the fact that it was only once a year, I was prepared to do that, and I wasn't about to complain about it because I knew what the rules were when I arrived. I am getting somewhere with this, by the way. I'm not trying to be somebody who fails to see anything negative about anything. There were things in Thailand that I didn't like, but the things in Thailand that I didn't like were far exceeded by the things I did like, and also the things I didn't like in my own country. They were all minor in comparison, and were a complete non-issue. I think, though, it's worthwhile talking about how everything turned out for me. I thought I was doing everything the most sensible way possible, I really did. I didn't know that there were certain people who would use this against me to destroy me. Or should I say, a certain person. And I didn't do anything the same way that many guys do, and that's one of the hardest things that I have to actually live with. The fact that I thought I was doing everything right, I thought I was going in with an abundance of caution, that just because I didn't meet a girl in a bar, or a massage parlour, or any place of the sort, just because she was not very much younger than I was, that didn't count for anything. It really makes me feel upset when I read through the comments on the stories on your channel. Seeing comments when people say they're rooting for the bar girl. That's like rooting for the devil, and the devil has already kidnapped your only child. I think one of the issues is that many people telling their stories perhaps are not able to articulate the brutal honesty of relationships like this. And I didn't even get into a relationship with a bar girl, as I said, or anything like that. What I did was sensible. At least I thought it was. I didn't know that there was such cunning, ruthlessness, and vindictiveness. I didn't know there was such out there that went far beyond that of a common lady of the night. Life was always very good to me until it wasn't. I managed to do a lot of amazing things that I'm very proud of and very thankful for. But Thailand, I guess, was my mistake. As soon as I left university, I started living the life I thought I would always live. I spent 2 years volunteering in East Africa, where I developed a love of different cultures and different peoples and different ways of life. It was a full volunteering gig, not one of these that you pay money to a charity and most of it goes in salaries. This was 100% money going towards the people that needed it the most. And the reason I wanted to do this was, in a way, to give back something before I started my own journey at making a living. I was lucky that I had a great upbringing, that I wasn't from poverty, and that I had the ability to go to a good school and a good university and get a good degree. so it only felt right to give something back. My volunteering work, I next had to spend a bit of time thinking about my career path. I hadn't yet decided what I wanted to do, but I did have an economics degree, but I wasn't wanting to work in a bank. That was something that wasn't me, and I kind of just fell into the work that I ended up doing for the next 30 years of my life. It was decent work, I enjoyed it, I made okay money at it, and it provided me with a good life, which meant that by retirement age, and the fact that I discovered Thailand and my money would go further there, I had enough money, saved up, and it was my intention to just live off the passive income that this would provide. I don't think I need to go into what job I did because that's irrelevant. I'm just trying to paint a picture of myself as a guy who wasn't someone who thought he was the bee's knees. I was just a regular guy, worked hard his whole life, and wanted to spend some time in retirement at a young enough age to be able to enjoy myself before I couldn't even walk anymore. One thing that I learned from my father, who worked himself to death, always wanting that little bit more money before he would retire. He hit his targets and he'd want that bit more, and he never got the chance to enjoy retirement. So that was always at the front of my mind when I was making big life decisions. I owned my own house, but I did sell that because I didn't want the trouble of having to be a landlord. I also felt a bit dirty by renting out a property to someone, as if in any other situation they wouldn't rather own it themselves. But property got so expensive that I didn't want to be one of those people who made money from people who didn't have enough money to buy their own place. So that's why I sold my house and just invested in some financial products that would give me a reasonable rate of return. That should give me a reasonable retirement. Nothing too special about me, nothing unique about me, just a typical guy who had a typical life that he was so thankful for. About to start my next chapter in the country of Thailand, because of all the reasons that I've already described. When I'd been to visit Thailand in 2015, I'd been all over the country. I spent 3 months there in total, and the longer I stayed there, the longer I fell in love with the country. I rented a motorcycle for the whole 3 months. I was always someone who loved riding, so I got a decent Honda touring bike up in the north, Chiang Mai, and made my way a bit further up north to Chiang Rai, before touring down south through a number of the provinces, many not on the tourist trail, making my way to Bangkok, which was an experience riding there. Then I went further south in the direction of Cambodia, which would see me going through Pattaya, Koh Chang and arriving at the Cambodian border, before going back up again and round the other way, all the way down to Phuket. It was the trip of a lifetime. I saw so much of the country, learned so much about it, and along the way I didn't meet one person from Thailand who was unfriendly, unkind or unwelcoming. All the people, and I still think that most people in Thailand are some of the world's friendliest, they will go above and beyond to make you feel welcome in the country. I didn't spend time in bars. I had a few beers after a long ride always came in handy, but I tried to keep a distance from the nightlife scene because it just wasn't something that interested me remotely. I did get used to seeing lots of foreign guys with younger Thai girls. That's something that you will see all over the country of Thailand, and nobody gives them funny looks or judges them. And again, one of the great things about Thailand, people could just be and do as they please as long as it wasn't hurting anyone else. While it wasn't my scene to enjoy the nightlife side of Thailand, I had no issue with other people enjoying it if that's what they wanted to do. I'm not trying to control anybody here. I'm just telling you who I am. But it was in Phuket when the holiday to Thailand became more than just a holiday to Thailand. It was when I really fell in love with the country and just about everything that it stood for. I used to think about walking around the streets back where I was from. I was having these thoughts when I was walking around Phuket. And back where I was from, there was always tension in the air. There was always worry that something was going to kick off. You always felt uncomfortable where I was from. But in Thailand, you didn't feel like that. Everyone could just be at one with each other, and there was none of these political things that we have to deal with at home. We're taught to fear people from certain places. We're taught to judge people from other places. In Thailand, you're so free to be able to just do what you wanted, while somebody from somewhere else could do the same thing. That's what made Thailand great, and I think I've probably said that enough. It was in Phuket, when I started to have the feelings, that I decided I wanted to retire early, because Thailand could give me everything that I would want in retirement, and I was even open to the possibility of meeting someone and having someone to spend my time with. And I guess that was where I made my first mistake, because I thought that by not looking in the bars, or any place like that, I thought that I would have more success, but that wasn't at the front of my mind yet. This was just one of the things you think about when you have all these thoughts rushing through your head at the same time. I felt excited again, I think that's the thing, and when I got home I started putting everything in place, and then I had decided that I was going to live in Phuket, and in 2016 I arrived in retirement, and it was probably the most exhilarating point of my life. First things first, I needed a place to live, and I just took a place on a month-by-month basis, even though it cost me a little bit more money, because I didn't really know which part of the island I wanted to live in. But I immediately felt right at home. It didn't take me any amount of time to settle in, no amount of time to get used to being there. As soon as I was there, I felt like I'd been there forever, and that only gave me even stronger thoughts about the fact that retiring early was the best decision I made. During that first month, I was just enjoying retirement. I wasn't going crazy, I wasn't going out every night getting drunk, and while I had drinks occasionally, that was usually just to go along with the meal. I did decide that I would like to be able to meet someone and spend time with someone who perhaps was at a similar point in their life to me, somebody who I could spend my days with, somebody who I could add to my retirement, and in return I could add to their lives. I was thinking about a relationship as an equal partnership, just as you would in your own country, and I don't know if that was another mistake I made, thinking that a relationship like this was available in Thailand to somebody like me. With that in mind, I joined a dating site, and I kept it open for the whole of Thailand. I was retired and I was good to travel anywhere, and travel was something I was most excited about doing in retirement. I couldn't wait to go and see different parts of the country that I hadn't yet seen. I thought about buying my own bike and doing an even bigger tour, but these were all ideas I was having and I wasn't rushing into anything. I felt it was quite easy to approach people on dating sites, and I was approached multiple times as well, and I thought it was quite apparent if somebody wasn't looking for something serious and they were just doing other sorts of things. I wasn't interested in that. And I did go on a few dates with girls in Phuket, but I never really felt anything other than it seemed that they were only interested in one thing alone, and that definitely wasn't me. I was only going to be meeting girls over the age of 35. I was thinking early 40s would be the perfect age for me, because I wasn't about to get into a relationship with someone so young that we'd have nothing in common. Again, you can be thinking you've got the best ideas, you can be thinking you're being careful, and everything that goes along with that. But still, when someone sends you a message who's living up in Bangkok, who's working in an office, 2 kids who are already grown up, and she was 41 years old, I thought it was more than worthwhile going to Bangkok to actually meet her in person, because we chatted for a bit online, and she seemed to be the sort of person that I could get along with. At this point, I'd been in Phuket for about 2 months, been on a few dates, but nothing more serious than that, and this was going to be my first time going somewhere else since retirement had started, and I couldn't wait to get to Bangkok, a city that still makes me stand still and actually understand how fortunate I am to be able to experience such a wonderful place. I was flying up to Bangkok in 3 days' time, so until then, we didn't really chat much apart from to confirm the date, and I was excited to be seeing something and doing something different. That's what retirement's all about, after all, and I was caught up in just how amazing it was to be a new retiree, living such a different life than I was living back at home. I flew up to Bangkok a day before we'd scheduled the date. I booked a really nice hotel quite close to the river, very close to the Ghost Tower, which was a building I would have done anything to have been able to climb to the top of, like so many guys did before. But I wasn't about to go trespassing or do anything illegal. I loved that part of Bangkok. I would probably say it was my favourite part of the city. You could walk a bit further and end up in Chinatown, which was amazing. But the date was actually arranged for a place in Asok. I spent my first evening just enjoying Chinatown, having some great grilled prawns along the street, and the following day I walked to the nearest underground station, which was actually quite a long way from where I was, probably a bad idea, given the fact that I was going on a date and now I was dripping with sweat, But it was Thailand, and that's what happened. And I did wear proper clothing colour so that the sweat wouldn't show up, which was at least one thing. I got to the underground, which is called the MRT in Thailand, got off at the Sukhumvit station, and walked about 500 metres, which I would say would be in the direction of the next MRT station. I think that one was called Phetchaburi. And it was around here that we were meeting at 1 p.m. at a little Japanese sushi restaurant, a place that she'd picked out. I was half an hour early. I don't know what it was, but when it came time for me to go anywhere, I always ended up arriving so early that I would end up having to wait a long time. But it just so happened that she was early as well, and it was a bit strange meeting her, because I felt like I'd already developed feelings for her before I'd even seen her. Not over the top or anything extreme, but she just seemed to be on a similar life path to me. Opposed to I didn't have kids, but I did work in an office just like she was doing. This was a weekend, so she wasn't working, and we both recognised each other straight away when we met. We took a seat at a table in the restaurant, which was very busy at the time. It added to the atmosphere, I thought. I always loved those places in Thailand where you could go and it was always busy, and you know it's popular. I felt like it made the experience even more exciting. From there, we just started talking as you would do on any date, and I did feel an immediate connection with her, and I kind of felt like she felt the same thing with me. I told her that I'd retired and how I was living in Phuket, but I was open to anything, because that's what retirement was for. And she went on to talk about how at 41 she had 2 kids, as I already knew. They were both grown up. She had them when she was very young. She didn't need to support them anymore, and she was separated from the father of her kids over 15 years ago, and she was just working what she described as a boring office job, where she didn't earn a lot of money, at least she said, because she didn't have a university degree. She just said she made calls for a company, made outgoing calls, and it just sounded like a normal, respectable job. We both shared our own dreams as well about what we'd like to do in the future, and I said that I was already living my dream, and she said it was her dream when she retired to go and live on the island of Koh Chang and maybe open a little place there. That was very specific, I thought. I'd been there before when I did my motorcycle tour and I liked it, but it wasn't my favourite place. But she just said that she had a great time there once with her kids a long time ago, and it was a moment that she cherished, so that was why she said it. We didn't go there, by the way, so if you're thinking that didn't happen. It's just the things you share on a first date to get to know each other. And the thing was, I wanted more than just a first date with her, and she did as well. It was great, though, to just go on a normal date where she didn't expect anything from me, and she knew that I didn't expect anything from her, just normal. Was it too normal? It could have been, but I didn't know anything about anything about her. We arranged a date for the following evening after she'd finished work. I left from that date feeling energised, but it was clear what the intention of those dates were from the girls I met, but with her it was a lot more comfortable and real somehow. We met up the following evening and spoke at length, and the following week in a row we kept meeting up every day. We're at the stage now where I'm paying for a date and then she's insisting that she would pay for the next one. I didn't let her do that because she said she didn't make a lot of money, but she did appear to have a reasonable amount of money based on what she was wearing and the bag she had and the phone she had, but she didn't really want to give too much away about her job and what she did exactly. I would later find out why. I know she didn't work in a bar or anything like that, which seems to be the most typical form of deceit, but that's completely beside the point. I wasn't expecting to stay in Bangkok for so long, but after we'd been on all those different dates for over a week, I had to go back to Phuket to do some things, and we spoke every single day, probably a few hours a day, when I was there, and it became clear that it felt like we had something that could turn into something better, something long-term, something meaningful. So I decided to go and spend another week in Bangkok, see her as much as possible, and if it got to the point where I liked her, then I could move to Bangkok and see more of her there. None of this moving in together straight away, none of this telling her to stop working and I'll support her. This was nothing close to what this relationship started off as. It just seemed to be two people who had found each other, who were interested in each other. During that weekend in Bangkok, we did spend more time, and because I'd only booked for a week, I was due to go back to Phuket, and we sort of talked with each other, and I said, well, I'm going to move up to Bangkok. I can give up my place anytime because I only took it for a month for this very reason. So let's take a place in Bangkok for a month, see how it goes from there. We both thought that that would be the best idea. So I returned to Phuket, spent a few days there, got most of my things, and went back to Bangkok, where I rented a place for a month and started living, seeing her as much as possible. At 41, she didn't look 41, she looked 31, and I'm not exaggerating or trying to say anything other than I found her very attractive. Just over 10 years younger than me as well, so I thought that was very appropriate. During all this time, nothing has happened over and above just going on dates with each other, going out to eat, going for a few drinks, talking, and going our separate ways after the date. I wasn't there to rush. I wasn't one of those guys who couldn't control himself. But when you hear about all these guys who do these ridiculous things and end up losing that money, supposedly they did have a very good time along the way. And while I'm having a good time, I'm just trying to be as respectable and decent as possible, considering that we're both equals who both deserve to be respected by each other. Things did get more serious after I'd spent 2 weeks in Bangkok. She came back to my place for the first time, and I did have very strong feelings for her, and she was the one who professed love for me first. From that moment, we kind of became inseparable. As her kids were grown up, she was just living in a small apartment a few SkyTrain stations away from her office, and the place I rented was closer to her office. So it just kind of happened that she started living with me, and I took the place for a longer lease, which gave me a better rate, for 6 months. And she gave up her place, and she was continuing to go to work every day. She would bring back dinner in the evenings after she'd worked, and I wasn't giving her any money in terms of financial support, and sometimes she would treat me to a meal out, and it just felt like what a normal relationship would feel like. This went on all through to the end of 2016. Retirement's going great, the relationship's going even better, but the only thing I'm not really liking much is the fact that I'm living in central Bangkok, an amazing city that I love so much, but it was quite difficult on a day-to-day basis just to do anything or go anywhere because of just how busy it was, and I wasn't used to that constant activity happening all around you. It wore me out, even though I wasn't working, and it was because of that I started thinking about the possibility of her leaving her job and for both of us to move to a different place in Thailand that was a bit more relaxing, a bit more conducive to a comfortable environment where you didn't feel pressure being thrown at you from every angle. I didn't raise it with her yet, but by March 2017 I did feel like I would spend the rest of my life with her, and we decided to get married, and I did raise the point about her leaving work, and then we could move somewhere and just live the retired life. She could retire early, I retired early, and she'd only be retiring 10 years before I did, so it wasn't like she was 20 years old and I expected her to be at my every beck and call. This was a completely different situation. But what we did agree was that she would work for 3 more months, we would get married, which would involve doing everything the Thai way in the village that she was from, just on the outskirts of Ayutthaya, a city about an hour north of Bangkok. Those 3 months pass, the more that time goes by, the more I'm feeling in love with her, the more we seem to go well together, and the more things we seem to have in common. The having things in common thing seemed to be exactly how I saw it, but I did get to the point where I wasn't sure if she did actually have anything in common with me, or she was just pretending to. But at this moment in time, I can't believe how my retirement is going as well as it was. My investments are more than covering my living expenses, but I did know I would have to spend a bit of money for the wedding, but I was prepared to do that. And I did know that if she no longer worked, my investments would have to provide for our lifestyle, but there was nothing to indicate that that wouldn't be possible based on how much money was coming to me, about $20,000 per year. That I got as income, and I was more than happy with it. When it was time for us to go and get married, I'd not yet been to visit her family before. Both her parents were getting on in years given the fact that she was already 42. We hadn't really talked about anything other than the fact that I would need to pay for the wedding until the time came when we were actually going to be going. And then she started talking about the good old sinsot, which I'd heard about but not expected that it would have any effect on me, because I was getting into someone when we were both quite old. But when we were due to go, the following day that is, she brought up how this would be something that I would need to pay to the family, and it was going to be 1,000,000 baht. I was really alarmed when she hit me with this, and it was the way that she said it, like, this is something you don't have a choice with. Do you want to lose everything we've got and everything we've got together and everything we've made together? But she's not saying it in a way like that. She's not forcing it on me. It's just as if it's one of those things that we both have to accept if we want to get married. And this is what it is. I can either accept it or not, and if not, then she would be really upset because she doesn't want to lose me. She never asked for any money from me before for anything. I'd paid when we went out together, and she'd paid on some occasions. She was working up until this point and had just quit the job. She'd never asked for an allowance, never asked for money for the family, never asked for anything at all. I don't think there was one occasion throughout the whole time from when I met her until this very point in time when she'd asked for any money or anything of the sort. I think that's why, when I got over the initial shock that such a large amount of money was going to be required so that we could even get married, when I got over that initial shock, I started to think that it was only one payment. She had never asked for money before, and if I was like many guys who had relationships, the amount of money that they could have spent over the relationship could be that much anyway. So I took everything that happened in our relationship up until this point to mean something. This is a one-off. We're getting married. We're solidifying our love for each other. And if this is what it takes, it's only a minor thing, and I will pay it because I feel like I want to be with her for the rest of my life. I know I should have thought about it a lot more. Maybe sought advice from somewhere, maybe actually looked into the bigger picture. Because under normal circumstances, it's not normal to pay that amount of money for someone who's already in her 40s and who has kids. It's not normal, and I didn't do any research though into that to understand it wasn't. I was just too brought into the fact that I thought I'd found a girl who wasn't after money. I thought I'd done everything in the correct way, that I agreed that I would pay this money, and once it was agreed, we just went back to normal conversations. I did manage to put it to the back of my mind, and I was quite happy to be going the following morning to her village. It's only going to take us about an hour and a half to get there. I had to take a cash advance from my credit card to get all that money, and I had to dip into my investments to pay that back, but it wasn't going to make much of a difference. So I just considered it to be a one-off, and I did also decide, based on things that we talked about, that I would buy a motorcycle, and before we decided where to live, we would do a very big tour of the country, and that would be the only thing I would pay for aside from getting married. We had plans to be on the road for a long time, which was exciting to think about. But first things first, it was getting married. So we went the following day to the village just in a taxi, since it wasn't that far, and there were people there getting things ready. We were actually going to be getting married the following day. When that day came, there weren't very many people there, like I expected. There was her mother and father and a few other people in the family. Her kids didn't come, and it was a very, very small affair. I'd heard of village ceremonies before, where the entire village shows up. They bring cards with money in, and everyone gets to see this marriage and witness us being together. But this was completely different to that. Probably 10 people in total were there, as well as me and her. But I was okay with that because I didn't spend any time to think about, is there anything wrong with the situation? It was presented to me like that, and I did everything that was requested of me. I handed over the money, which was all in cash, and everything seemed to be good. It didn't last very long, though. A few months there. But aside from that, it was very nondescript in terms of a marriage. The following day, we arranged transport back to Bangkok, and one thing that I didn't even question, and perhaps I should have, was that the $1,000,000 cash was now with my wife. I thought this was meant to go to the family, and she just said that she was going to put it in the bank and send it to her family when she got back to Bangkok. I didn't question that, as in, why couldn't they pay it into the bank themselves, just thinking that they were in a village location and they might not be very good at banks and financial institutions. So I'm putting all that to one side in my thoughts and didn't really think anything of the fact, when I arrived, I was carrying the cash. When we left, she was carrying the cash. And when we got back, she just said she's going to put it in the bank and send it to her family, and that was it. There was no way to know if she actually did that or not, but I guess she probably didn't, and she just somehow managed to get $1,000,000 out of me, which was not very good. Perhaps she said to her family that the sin salt was a small amount, but this was just a show to make it look good, and we want it back. That could have happened, I've heard about that before, and I do think that's probably the most likely thing. I bet she spoke to her parents who would have been happy with, anything, 100,000 baht, and she wanted to make things look good and somehow pocket this money, and then, I think about the whole situation of her never asking for money from me. Would I have actually lost $1,000,000 if I'd given her money, up until that point, and not given her that million? Probably not. And then it's the things that you don't understand and recognize until it gets to a point of being too late. But aside from that, we were both really happy to be married, and there is no indication that she's trying to do anything other than be my wife. We only did the village ceremony because I had the retirement visa and there was no point getting married on paper. It felt like it was going to be unnecessary. I didn't have anyone to leave anything else to apart from her, so she'd be in my will anyway. That's all I was thinking about. Although, not much. It didn't seem that we needed to actually do everything on paper, so we didn't, and we just started our life as a married couple. I was supporting her now, but she's not overly asking for anything. I mean, she never asked for anything from me. She doesn't want an allowance. She just says when we go out, I can pay. When we go shopping, I can pay. And if she needs something, I can pay. She's not going to take money from me. And again, I just saw that as her respecting me and both our positions in the relationship. We spent about a month together in Bangkok, and that was when I went and bought a bike, my dream bike, a Honda Africa Twin, because we talked about and discussed for a very long time how I'd dreamed to travel around Thailand, and we decided that we would do that, with no end in sight. My income would be enough to cover it. We're just going to be staying in normal hotels, eating normal food, and just getting to know the country as well as possible. Having a good time along the way as a newly married couple would be the bonus. And again, I thought that what I was doing was how I should be doing it. When we set off on the bike, that was a very special moment. It's one thing to go on a tour knowing when it's going to come to an end, but another thing altogether different when there's no end in sight in a good way, and you don't quite know how things are going to turn out or where you're going to end up from one day to the next. Because she talked about Koh Chang before, that was the first place we decided to go to. We did stop off for a night in Pattaya first, which was fun, and then we made the ride down to Koh Chang the following day. It didn't take too long to get there, and it was just so fun to be on the bike. She liked sitting on the back, and we just took it easy. Full protective clothing and helmets and everything you need, stopping off any time we needed to stop off and not rushing. When we got to the island, it was great. She showed me the place that she had fond memories of, and talked about how she'd love to be able to live there. But again, it's one of those conversations you have where anyone can say that they'd love to do something and that's fine. But actually doing it was quite clear that we weren't going to do that. But I could see the appeal. We spent 3 days there having a great time, and from there we went north through Chantaburi and made our way into Isan, which was a part of the country I'd not been to before. Suppose we spent about a month in total, stopping off at various towns and cities along the way. I'm in my absolute happy place, riding with my new wife who I'm in love with and who I think is in love with me as well, and we're visiting new places and travelling. This is the retirement that I'd envisaged, and it was actually happening, and I felt very fortunate about that. Next, we went up to a few of the northern cities, Chiang Mai, where we spent a week not riding at all, and a few of the other places around there from Chiang Rai to Phayao, and my first time in Mae Hong Son, which was a really great experience. Pai was fun, very different to anywhere else I'd been in Thailand, and that was our last stop-off point before heading down south. The idea was to do a big ride, make our way to Nakhon Sawan, spend a night there before going to visit her family in Ayutthaya. The idea was to spend a few days there and then slowly make our way down to the Malaysian border. It was going to be the longest part of the ride and we both couldn't wait to do it. We followed that plan, and we were staying in a small hotel quite close to her village for a week, and actually she was just visiting her family and a few friends in the area, and I was just enjoying myself, taking everything in, thinking everything that I was doing and how fortunate I was, while at the same time pinching myself to actually think that this was my retirement and I could do this all the time. I was just so happy with things, and we'd been there probably 1 or 2 days when she said that when the trip was over, how about if we actually lived here instead? Maybe we could have our own place, we don't need to rent in Bangkok and throw that money away, and then we could move and do more trips from here instead. I listened very intently to what she was saying. It seemed to be an idea that I wasn't going to say no to, because I'd heard so many times before, the rent thing. The rent would no longer be required. So although the income might be less, because of that, it wouldn't really matter, because we'd have the same amount of money to live on anyway. I hadn't given up the place in Bangkok when we were doing this tour. I've got so many things I couldn't just give it up. So I was still paying rent even though we hadn't been there, and that would actually always be the case. I started warming to the idea. She wasn't forcing it on me though. She wasn't forcing it down my throat. It was just raised as being one of many possibilities. And I hadn't said yes or no by the time we left for what would be our first time back in Bangkok since we set off. And all throughout the drive, I was thinking about being based somewhere as beautiful and as peaceful as that. Using that as the point to go off on our many adventures. Because of the no rent situation, it shouldn't affect my retirement in any way, and I was warming to the idea. I was the one who brought it up again when we were in Bangkok. I brought it up saying let's think about it more. Let's look up what potential houses could be like that we could get for the price equivalent of how much money that provides. And we spent a few days looking around in Bangkok at different examples, although this wouldn't be in Bangkok. It quickly became clear that we could have a nice 3-bedroom house, as well as a nice outside area, and even enough money for a car. That's when the idea started to appeal. But we were on our tour and she wasn't forcing anything or trying to make me hurry with the decision. It was just a slow-moving thing that we talked about for a long time. We left Bangkok to do the next leg of our adventure, and I do feel so fortunate that I'm able to be living like this. We made our way next to Hua Hin, where we planned to spend a week, maybe a bit longer, just exploring that part of the country and the surrounding areas. It was great to be there because it was a place that I always loved. We were talking about the house from time to time, but we'd not come to a decision yet. We left Hua Hin, going further down south over the next few weeks, stopping off at places along the way, and it was actually when we were on the island of Koh Samui when I decided that the house would be the best thing to do. It would be a lot more comfortable than living in a condo in Bangkok. As I already said early on, I didn't really like how busy it was in Bangkok, and the idea of living there permanently was something that I wasn't all too keen on. Also, it was a situation of where else to live, what to do, and we don't need to pay rent, so okay, I think we can go for it. And we were on the island, so we decided to leave the bike parked up, fly to Bangkok, go to her village, get everything arranged in terms of the land that would need transferring from her mother to her. Then, once the land was arranged, I would leave everything to her. She can find a company to build a house, and then we can continue our tour. We still had so much to see and do. And I was also hoping to go back up north again, because when we were there, we didn't have the best weather. So that's exactly what we did. Flight to Bangkok, up to the village, spent a week or so there, and it got to the point where the land was registered in her name. I went to the land office in order to, witness it, not thinking that I wouldn't trust her, but I wanted to be there just to see what the process was like because it fascinated me. Then we looked at more examples of houses around the area, and the figure that kept coming up for a basic 3-bedroom single-story house would be approximately the equivalent of $70,000. Plus, we would need to spend another $20,000 on top of that, which meant that, to play everything safe, if we allocated $100,000, which at the time I was getting about 5% on, $5,000 a year, that was basically the rent that I was paying in Bangkok. So it didn't feel like we would be reducing our quality of life. If anything, it felt like we would be increasing our quality of life. It didn't feel like a sacrifice. It felt like it was something for our future. We'd have a great place to live, very close to Bangkok, and it would be the perfect place to use as a base for our other adventures because we planned to do so many more. But once everything was agreed to, I cashed out some of my investments to the tune of $80,000. I would do the rest later when it came time to furnishing it, and I gave it to my wife and left her firmly in charge. After that, we went back to Bangkok, flew back to Samui, spent a few days there celebrating the idea of our house, and left further down south. Over the next few weeks, maybe a whole month actually, we had a great time and eventually got to Phuket, which was where I planned to live if I never met her. She'd been contacting multiple people, she said she'd found a contractor, she paid the money, and they were just waiting for a date when they were finally going to start. And it was exciting, things were looking promising. I was really looking forward to things, and I was just leaving everything up to her because she was the local and she seemed to know what she was doing. I wanted to spend a whole month in Phuket, which we did, and it was during that time that a few of her friends from Bangkok just so happened to be visiting for a 3-day holiday. 3 girls who also worked in the same office that she worked in. She said she really wanted to meet up with them and said I should come along as well. I thought I should just let her go and see her friends herself, but she insisted. She said it would be fun to introduce me to them because they were still working and she'd like me to go too. So when the time came, we went to a great restaurant and she saw her friends in the distance already sat down. And you know, when a Thai person sees someone else, they shriek or squeal in excitement, run over and hug each other, and they're all talking in Thai as fast as they can. I'm not picking up much Thai yet, but it's understanding some words. We had a great meal, 2 bottles of wine, and then it was, well, we're going out for some more drinks, let's go. I was never a huge drinker, although I liked to drink, so I agreed to go and would just take it easy on the alcohol and let my wife have a good time with her friends. I was always up for seeing new things and experiencing new things, so we went to this small Thai-style place which was quite quiet and peaceful, and the drinks are flowing and they're getting more lively and the conversation's getting more exciting. And I think it was around this time when I said to one of her friends, who all spoke English, how's work? I hadn't really spoken to my wife much about it, apart from, she said she made calls, and this friend said that it was great. She made a bit of a cheeky laugh, saying that she'd just closed a big deal in investment to someone, and she'd made a lot of money out of it, and she was the one treating the other 2 friends to this trip. I didn't know what she meant by that, and I didn't care to push. But when I spoke to my wife about it later, I started to think that perhaps this job of hers was a little bit dishonest in nature. I think that's the best way to think about it. She just said that she sold investments to people. What kind of investments? Just investments. But my wife didn't appear to be someone who was qualified to sell investments or offer investment advice. But again, I didn't think anything of it. It would be later when I would start to put all the pieces together and think, especially with everything that's going on in Thailand today and in the neighbouring countries, that perhaps this was something similar to that. I didn't think this at the time, though. Her friends left. We spent more time in Phuket. She's always talking to people about the house, and I'm thinking that construction had already started. We made our way further down south to a few other locations, places that I was a bit apprehensive going to based on the reputation and news that you hear from the far south of Thailand. I loved Hat Yai as a city. That was interesting. That was until we'd been there for about 5 days, and my wife had gone out to have her hair done. I was just relaxing in the hotel, and she came back with a very sad and shocked expression, saying that there's been a big problem with the house. What's happened? I was thinking it was going to be something minor. I thought construction had already started, but she just said that the construction company that she found, she's already paid, had taken all the money and she can't contact them. That was not what I was expecting to hear. The first thing I said is, okay, go and report it. And she said she already had, and it's just a waiting game until we hear anything more. I said how much of the house is done, and she said that nothing had been done. They hadn't even started, and they'd taken the money. This was $80,000 we're talking about, it's all gone, and she's doing her best to try and sort it out, and she's sorry, but it looks like there might be a problem. Then she said, oh, don't worry about it, I'll do everything I can to make it right, and let's just try to enjoy ourselves in the meantime. That was easier said than done, and from that moment on, I wasn't enjoying myself anymore, because all I was thinking about was what was going on with the house, and she's saying that she's dealing with it and sorting it out, and I'm upset and worrying about things, and I think it was this time that we made it back to Bangkok. I was really panicking because she just kept saying soon we'll find out, and then she said she's going up to her village by herself. She said it was better to go herself because if a foreigner was involved it might make things more difficult. So I let her go by herself and I'm just staying in Bangkok, not understanding what's going on. She goes up and we're speaking for quite a long time, and I'm starting to get angry and concerned and worried. And then she's getting angry with me for getting angry. She's getting upset with me for getting upset. She said she's trying her best to sort it out. She's been to the police, she's done everything about it, and she said the problem is that this company has gone bankrupt and there's nothing we can do about it, because they haven't actually scammed us. They took the money, they had some problems, and they've gone bankrupt. And it was the company, not a person. And just coming up with excuses basically as to why we can't do anything about it. I'm telling her, don't be stupid. We need to do something about it. I'm going to come up. And she said, no, you can't, because I've already done everything. We can't do anything about it. I'm so sorry. We can't do anything. And she just said, I'm going to come back to Bangkok and we can talk about it. I'm in absolute panic mode like I've never been before. I don't understand how things can go so wrong. But from everything she said, it's like we can't do anything about this. She arrives back in Bangkok the following day. She's apologetic, saying she's sorry, but this company has gone bankrupt and there's no chance to get the money. And we can't cause problems for the family in the area because everybody knows everybody. If we try to do anything, the whole family could fall apart, and she's sorry about it, but there's nothing we can do. I'm so upset and angry about things, as you would expect. And that's how I felt for a long time, just trying to come to terms with this. And she's using that to keep saying to me to stop being angry. I don't like you acting like this. And what actually happened across the course of the next month was we drifted apart substantially, because I can't do anything, because I'm a foreigner. And my wife, who at this point I trusted implicitly, who had never wanted anything from me apart from the money for the marriage and the house, now it seems like something's gone wrong somewhere, and it's not her fault, and that's what I'm currently thinking. But because I'm so upset and angry, she's not liking it, and she's saying to me that we can't continue like this if you don't calm down. While I was still able to live in terms of a retirement, there was a big difference in what I had now coming in on a monthly basis, and we couldn't tour around anymore. We couldn't do that on the budget we had anymore, and we couldn't stay in the same kind of places. So I was having such a bad time, and it all came about one day when she just said that she was leaving. We weren't married legally, as I already told you, but me being upset and worried about things was an excuse for her to leave. And at this point I still hadn't made any conclusions about what the situation was or what had actually happened. I was still thinking that everything was just a really unfortunate stroke of bad luck. Why would I think it was anything other than a stroke of bad luck? It didn't make sense to me that it would have been anything other than that. But the fact that she didn't try to support me through the time, like I would have supported her through the time if it was the other way round, she left. And although I could contact her a few times after that, it got to the point where she didn't really answer her phone. And I'm still there, in that same place in Bangkok that I shouldn't be renting anymore, no wife anymore, and I've lost $110,000 including the Sinsot money, and I can't do anything about it. That was when I had the lowest point of my life. Because after speaking to a few friends, after reading information online, I started to actually think that she'd set the whole thing up. But there was no way for me to prove it. When I contacted her again multiple times before she answered, and asked her, did you set this up? She just said, don't be stupid. Why would I do that? I love you, but you're acting in a very strange way. I can't stay with you anymore. If you act normally, I want to stay with you, but you're not acting normally. So again, there was nothing I could do about it. I mean, without it costing me a lot of money, and that could have been wasted for nothing as well. I gave up on her from that moment because it was clear that she didn't want to stay with me anymore, and I was coming to terms with everything that I was finding out about how this was probably a setup all along. I actually wanted to go to the company where she worked to find out more information, but I didn't even know which building it was in or what the company was called. After multiple sleepless nights, lots of digging and lots of me coming to my own conclusions, I started to think that I was 100% right in the belief that she did sell scam investments as a job, and she did deliberately scam me out of both the Sinsot money and the house money. I don't believe her family were remotely involved with this. In fact, I would bet money that her family weren't in on this because they were decent, respectable people who would never think of doing something like that. But what I think happened with the Sinsot was she agreed a lesser amount and she spoke to her parents about me or her wanting the family to look good with a large amount and, he wants the money back kind of thing. But she took it for herself instead and maybe gave her parents a token amount. That's what I'm pretty sure happened there. In terms of the house, I think she came up with an idea where I can pay, she can get the money, something can go wrong, and she can keep the money without me being able to do anything about it. I could have potentially done something about it, but it would have cost a lot of money, so it wouldn't have been worth it anyway because the chances are I would never have got any money back and I would have lost a lot more. And then, that conversation with her friend who worked for the same company, talking about investments. I can't see any world where what she was doing was a respectable investment deal. I don't think that was the case. I'm very sure, in fact, that she had deliberately sold investments to people that she had no business selling. And when you're hearing today about all these call center scams that are happening in Thailand or on the outskirts of Thailand in the neighboring countries, international criminal gangs. This was, I think, before this happened, because this was within an office in Thailand. It wasn't on the borders. It wasn't anything overly extreme like we hear about today. I don't know how they set it up. I don't know anything about what they did. But that is what I would bet the rest of my money on being the case. From the start, she acted like the sort of girl that anybody would want to be with. Never wanted money, never wanted expensive gifts. She didn't work in a bar. She didn't work in a massage parlor. She didn't do anything that appeared that she valued money as much as some of the girls that you see who will do anything for it. I gave her money 2 times. Once to get married, and the other time for the house. But that amount, as I said, added up to $110,000, which is a lot of money. I am convinced that she played me. After that, though, I didn't want to be in Thailand anymore. It was upsetting because it completely removed all the feelings I held for Thailand. I just wanted to be somewhere else. I wonder if she's done it to other people's. There's a chance she has. I think that situation is rare, though. It was just a very unfortunate one because it happened to me. I'm now living my retired life in a different country, which I shall not name. I have a good time, but I have never got into another relationship since then because there's always that risk there. There's always a risk that something could go wrong, and I don't want to take that risk. I'm single, I will remain single, and I guess I should be thankful that I can actually continue to live my life in retirement and I didn't lose everything, like so many unfortunate guys did.